Welcome to the Author to Authority podcast. And today I have on the show Catherine Ann Clayton. And I feel like even though we haven't known each other very long, we are very quickly becoming kindred spirits. And she is an educator, a coach, a speaker, and an entrepreneur. She's also a wife, a mother, and a business owner. She's taught for 21 years. She was in corporate America for 6 years, where she earned the title of the top salesman for the last 4 years in a row. It was at the top of her game, though, that she realized that money was not really fulfilling her anymore. The long hours, missing her family, and wanting to be a present parent made her decide to walk away and explore other home-based businesses. She is now the CEO of 3 Energy LLC, an electric brokerage company. She's also the creator of LinkedIn Leverage Mastermind and the Power Profile, where she shows you how to use LinkedIn to create financial and flex time freedom. And she recently created Bold Biz Solutions, where she helps driven women learn to make their own money and their own freedom and get out of the cycle of working too hard to make others wealthy. So welcome to the show, Catherine.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
So, Catherine, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and share a bit of your story with us?
Well, again, I'm Catherine Ann Clayton, and I do go by Catherine Ann. A lot of people call me Kathy and Catherine, but I am an old, from the South, and I go by double names. And basically, I help business women and men find the blind spots in their business because they might be struggling. And I teach them how to break through those blind spots and take their business to the next level of profits. My story you told a little bit about it, but I think the turning point was I came home one day and I was in a big, I was earning 6 figures and I was working 60 to 70 hours a week. I was like you said, I was at the top of my game. And I came home one day and I looked at my daughter. She was 11 at the time. And I said, hey, let me help you with that. And she looked at me and said, oh, Mommy, you're too grumpy and tired. I'll let Daddy help me. Well, that was a pierce to the heart.
Yes.
And I believe that God works in mysterious ways. And a couple of days later, the president of the company came to me, who was a friend of mine, and said, hey, they're about to call you and talk to you about your money. And I just want you to know you can do this at home, which I didn't really know what he meant. A week later, they called me in, and my boss actually said to me, you make too much money, you make more money than me, and we're going to cut your commissions. Well, you know how corporate works. They do all these formulas and you're sitting there kind of glazed over like deer in the headlights. And I had no idea what it meant, but I just kind of accepted it. Came home, asked my husband, and I realized it was a 90% cut in my commissions. Yeah, which is crazy. That was April 15th of 2015. And at that point, I looked at my husband and I said, after what Emma Catherine said, and we had children so that, they could come into our lives and I could be a present parent. I'm an older parent. I had parents late in life. And he was like, I think we can make it work. We're going to have to cut down our lifestyle a little bit, but I think we can make it work. And I said, well, Scott told me I could do this by myself. So I actually waited a month. I walked out May 15th, 2015, have never looked back. Started creating the 3 Energy, which is the electric brokerage company. Then after about 6 months, decided to start looking for home, work from home stuff. I am a driven woman. I love being a parent. I am very present in my kids' lives now. However, there's only so much laundry you can do. And when they're at school for 8 hours, there's so many underwear that you can fold before you're like, I am done. And I quickly realized that while the stay-at-home mom gig may not be for me, I could stay at home, create a business, and be that present parent that I wanted. And that's when I started helping other entrepreneurs grow their businesses.
Yeah, it's funny when you were telling me your story, all I could think of was, yeah, your boss was jealous. But it's stupid as a business. Here you are, the top salesperson. If you're making more in commission than your boss is on salary, that means you're doing something right. And a wise company would have paid you more so that you could bring them in more money. And yet, for some reason they look at it as an expense, but you weren't an expense. You were bringing in that money for them.
Well, I will say this, it's very interesting because I closed the Internal Revenue Service of Texas for electricity, and my boss was actually a lady. And I think that you're right. I think she was jealous. And I was thinking to myself, I'm only making you look good. I'm only helping you do it. But I think she was a very driven woman too, and didn't understand that when women band together, they can really create wonderful, fabulous things.
Mm-hmm.
I think she was so concerned about, you know, jumping the corporate ladder that she was going to knock down everything on the way up. And that's what happened. I do know that, I had some friends, obviously, for as long as I was, they had to hire 3 people to replace me. So which I think is funny because if you add up their salary and their commissions, I'm sure they're paying them more now.
Yes.
But you sometimes just realize that things happen for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And how everything fell into place with my daughter, and then the president telling me something, and then I'm not going to say that the journey of being an entrepreneur has always been uphill, because it is a struggle, and you have to stay motivated, and not even really motivated, because some days you just don't feel like doing it. You have to stay driven is what I teach people, because motivation is not going to make you do that call that you don't want to do when your phone is heavy, heavy, heavy. You have to be driven, and you have to really know what your motivation is. And I always tell my clients, motivation can't be money. Even though you want to make money, you've got to know what that money provides for you. And for me, it provides vacation time, freedom with my kids, freedom to do what I want. Last week we took off for a week. We decided like 5 days late, before we left, and we went to the beach with the kids.
Yeah.
And so that's what it's providing for me, the freedom. I couldn't do that if I was in a 9-to-5 job.
No. And that is so true. And I think that's important that you use that word driven. And I know for many people that word can have a negative connotation. But the truth is that, motivation really isn't enough.
Absolutely.
You get motivated to wash the dishes.
Right.
You can motivate yourself enough to go, I got to wash these dishes today, right? But when you're an entrepreneur, sometimes it's easy to feel overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, when you look at making that one more phone call that you have to make today, it becomes like this overbearing weight that you kind of can't pull yourself from under. And motivation is not going to be enough to get you to make that phone call. You have to have that, internal, like almost like steel bar inside of you that says, I'm going to do this no matter how I feel. And to me, that's kind of what driven is. It's that foundational stake in you that just says, it's got to be done. I'm going to do it no matter what.
I agree. I will tell you that when I learned how to track my day and how to break down my day, you've got your goals, you've got your whatever, but I teach my clients this too. I really break down my day. How many calls do I have to make a day to make this certain amount of money that's going to give me this certain amount of freedom? My goal, and we're talking long-term goal, is to be able to work 6 months and not work 6 months. So I know, I literally have taken it to the, micro level of, I have to call this many people a day. I have to reach out to this many people a day in order to make those sales. And once I learned that in my business, everything started really growing because,
Mhm.
I'll tell you what happened the night before we left for vacation. I had looked at my sheet because, again, I track everything. I looked at my sheet and I did not make enough reach outs, which means invited somebody to a conversation. And it was 12 at night. I was trying to get everything done so I didn't have to do anything on vacation. And I was like, wait a minute. I've got people in Europe that are just now waking up. I
Mhm.
need to reach out to them. And I got my numbers in because I reached out to the people in Europe, and I actually booked 2 calls because
Nice.
I stayed up late and did it. Again, if I hadn't had that tracking and knew what my goals were per day, I would have never been able to do that. I would have just been kind of like floundering in the ocean in the sea of fish and not
Mhm.
being with a school of fish, just kind of going on my own.
Yeah.
So that really does help, is to learn how to track what you're doing
Mhm.
to get the things that you want.
Yeah, and you know, for some people tracking may seem boring, but tracking actually sets you free
Absolutely.
because you now have your tracking is your game plan. It's like, okay, if I need to do this, then I need to do so many of this and so many of this. And when you track it throughout the day, you can then plan accordingly. And for me, when I was in one of my home-based businesses, tracking actually set me free because I was in a situation where what I was doing, you got a lot of no's.
Mm-hmm.
And I would get
Absolutely.
so discouraged about these no's that I was getting. And then my manager at the time, she said to me, she said, Kim, start tracking how many no's you get before you get a yes. And then it completely changed because once I knew how many no's, okay, 5 no's approximately, and I get a yes, right?
Right.
Or 7
Right.
no's, or however many no's it was. And over time, as I did it more, it took a lot less people to talk to before I got that yes. So over
Absolutely.
time, that ratio improved. And so, it actually freed me from the no's because
Mm-hmm.
I was like, no, check mark. Yep.
Right. You're like, yeah, I don't have to talk to them again. I don't have to chase them.
you
So,
know, and
and
but then when I got the yeses, it was like, yeah, right. And so
right.
it actually drove me to do more because now no's were not a problem anymore.
Right. And I do, I am very, I realize that I am very, what's the word? What's the politically correct word? Again, I want to go to the word driven. I am very, I tell you how it is. I know that one of my clients said that I was like a sharpshooter. I just kind of lay it out there. I understand that I offend some people. I understand that not everybody is my tribe. Some people are going to either love me. With me, there's no in between. You either love me or hate me. I mean, Kim, I met you and we connected, I feel like immediately,
Mm-hmm.
when we first had our conversation. And once I got, about a year and a half ago, I got to where I didn't care if you liked me or not. And having that I don't care freed me so much. Um, and so, you know, now I'm sometimes when people can't make a decision, it's like ice cream. I'm like, chocolate, vanilla, or strawberry, just pick one. It doesn't matter. Just tell me no. It's okay to tell me no. And
You're
and
not going to hurt my feelings.
no, you're not, because guess what? Then I can move on and quit following up with you every day. Just tell me no, or just, I was talking to an executive 2 weeks ago and he acted all interested in this, that, and the other. And when I hung up the Zoom call, I was like, he is never going to work with me. I knew it in my subconscious, but he was like, call me back. Well, he ghosted me. And so then I'm like, you're a huge exec of $1 million company. Get the nerve just to say, no, I'm not interested. I mean, you're making $1 million. You don't want to work with me. Just say no. And I'm okay with that. But he ghosted me. And I sometimes, because I'm a little, I was like, I'm sorry. I hope nothing happened to you. You didn't answer the phone call when you told me to call you. So I'm a little cheeky that way sometimes. But, just make a decision because, not making a decision is a decision.
Yeah.
So.
Well, sitting on the fence, you're still sitting on the fence.
Right. Absolutely. And you either want to grow your business and learn how, or you want to stay stuck. And a lot of people are comfortable with that staying stuck because they're not willing to invest in themselves. And I'm one, I'm one that did that in the very beginning. I was like, what? I needed to invest in a coach? Wait a minute. That's cost this much money? What? Whoa. And I will tell you, I have invested in a lot of coaches that I did not learn anything, but it took me one step closer to the coach that really is helping me grow and that I'm really, doing. Me being a coach, I feel like that I always will need a coach.
Yes.
And I don't want to say to somebody that says, oh, well, do you have a coach? No, I don't have a coach, but you need to hire me. I don't believe, I don't believe that. So, you have to remember that every failure takes you one step closer to the success that you want.
And I think something important to bring up, because a lot of times, especially new entrepreneurs, they really don't have the money to invest in a coach. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur and maybe you're working a job, maybe you're not, but there's many ways to be coaches and there's many ways to have mentors. And I highly recommend that if you can afford a mentor that you work with personally, that you do it. Okay, because it does make a huge difference. But you know what? There's mentors on YouTube. There's mentors in books. There's people that you can follow that can pour into your life. You can go, okay, not a lot of them now, or pretty well all of them now are virtual, but you can go to conferences and summits and workshops. And like, I remember when I was starting my publishing company, I was probably about a year in, and it was going okay. But I was dealing with people I really didn't want to deal with. I was overwhelmed. And I went to this one-day workshop that just totally changed my perspective on my business. And the funny thing was, it was one of those events that I got to go to for free. I didn't even pay for it.
That's awesome.
And that day, that gentleman that spoke did a couple of things. First of all, he irritated me to no end, because I'm thinking, how dare you say that about me? Now, he was talking to the whole group, okay?
Right,
so it's not like he pulled me up in front of everybody.
So it probably was true because you were feeling guilty.
Yeah, I was like he kept telling everybody, if you're not making the money that you want, it's because you're invisible. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm invisible? I'm not invisible. I got skills, talents, and abilities. And I'm thinking all of this stuff while he's talking. And he's like, if you can't bring in clients in consistently, you're invisible. And I'm like, I guess I'm invisible, right? Right. The whole day, he was just pushing button after button after button. And there was times I wanted to leave because I was getting really mad. But what I realized afterwards was this gentleman was speaking truth. And as I looked at it and as I analyzed it, I realized it, and then I started making changes. And that's when I really started to see a lot of growth, and I was able to take some of the pressure off myself.
Right. Sometimes when they push you into that uncomfortable zone, that is when you have your biggest and best growth. And, being comfortable means that you're not pushing yourself enough.
Well, there's a box called comfortable.
Absolutely.
And when someone's trying to get you out of that box and you don't want to go. But I think that's an important concept. And I know we were going to talk about LinkedIn today, but you know what? I think what we're talking about now is just really crucial for a lot of people. So if you don't mind, Catherine, can we just stay on this train of thought for a little bit longer?
Absolutely, because I will tell you, LinkedIn just happens to be the tool that I use to increase my business and to grow my business, as well as other social media tools. LinkedIn just is a tool. It's not who I am. I know everybody knows me as the LinkedIn, lady leverage is what they call me. But, it's more about business and building your business. You're right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I think another important concept that I know that you can speak to is, let's talk a little bit about planning and taking action for growth.
Okay.
Because I think we get stuck in a rut in our businesses, and we don't know how to take it to the next level.
Exactly. I do what I do every month, and I did it yesterday. I usually do it the day before, but we had been at the beach, so I didn't do it. I sit down and I look at my numbers and I say, okay, this is what I made this month. Do I want to increase my numbers? Do I want to keep them the same or whatever? Now, I had a goal last month, and I'm going to be transparent here. I missed it by $402. So, so I was like, oh, and so I battled with myself. Do I bump it up or do I leave it the same as it was, in May? And I went to my coach and because I wasn't really sure what to do. And I said, do I bump it up? Do I not bump it up? She goes, go for it. Bump it up. And I was like, okay, she's really, again, stretching me out of that comfort zone. So I sat down and I figured out my numbers, and I have a formula that I use. And I figured out, again, how many invitations I have to ask, how many clients I need to get, how many people I need to get on a actual sales conversation, and how many new clients that I have to get. And, the number, just so you can see, it's right here. I look at it every day. It used to be kind of the side where I had to turn my head. Now I have it where wherever I'm looking, I look at it. And if I don't hit those numbers, then I know that my business is not going to be where it needs to be. Mm-hmm. I do plan out. I do what is called, and I teach my clients this as well, and I'm sure you've heard of it. I know you've heard of it. I batch content. Mm-hmm. And so on Saturday mornings, when all the teenagers are asleep and my husband is asleep, I get up early and I, do all my videos. I do all my posting. Now, I don't actually post, but I get them ready. So all I have to do is copy and paste. I did try one of those
schedulers.
Yes, schedulers. And it was doing exactly what I was doing, except for it was scheduling it. The only time it really worked for me was when I was on vacation. But because I use LinkedIn so much, they don't like schedulers. And so they don't show your content. So I was like, this is crazy. I'm paying extra money for this. I'm just not going to do this. So I write it out I'm very simple. I'm all about free tools. I write it out on a Word document, copy paste it on the weeks. But I've planned everything out, mm-hmm. and I kind of know what I'm talking about for the week. A lot of coaches and people that I've seen is they plan, 90 days, 30 days. I kind of know what the big vision is and where I want to be in 90 days. But for me, the 90-day plan was not working. Even the 30-day plan was not working for me. It doesn't mean it doesn't work for everybody, but I kind of am week by week because things mm-hmm. change in your business. I'll give you an example. What's happening in the world with the riots?
Yes.
Right now we're in June of 2020. For those of you that are watching this in 2022, we're in June 2020. Somebody was murdered, and riots are going all over the United States, and so my content for this week has changed mm-hmm. because of what's going on. Yes. If I had planned out 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, I would have been completely messed up. Mm-hmm. So I just took my week stuff and I pivoted or shifted. I don't like the word pivot because everybody's using that with COVID. I've shifted, and I'm going to do my content for this week, next week, and change my content to deal with the world situation and what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's just, same thing with COVID. There was a time with COVID, everybody had to pivot. And I was telling my clients, it's not really so much a pivot, Because if you pivot, if you picture you standing up and I say, turn turn halfway around, turn halfway around, turn halfway around, that's pivoting. You're moving around and around, and you get caught up in going around and around and around. I was telling them, you need to shift. You need to shift your thinking. You need to start going online. And people would be like, well, my customers aren't there. I'm like, Google meetup groups, and they've all gone virtual.
Yes.
Get in those groups. Talk to people in the groups. I know that I'm from Plano, and I know that in Dallas, Fort Worth, there are, I think there's more virtual groups now than there were actual meetups.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're seeing that, Kim.
Oh yeah, virtual groups everywhere. You could spend almost 24 hours a day on groups, meeting new people from all over the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what I tell my clients is that I do think it's important to get in groups. However, and I'm sure you got caught up in this when you first were doing your business, you can't go to all of them. No. And we all want to go into everything. So I tell my clients, join 2 groups, stay in it for about a week or 2, see if you like it, then stick with it if you want to, but don't do anything more than 2. I have taken my emails, because I subscribe to a ton of different emails, and now I only listen to 2 people because I'm ADHD. I have, shiny object syndrome, and I had to just stop the madness because I wasn't being focused on my business. I was focusing on everything else instead of money-making activities, and it was getting me lost.
Well, that saying is your network is your net worth. And if you're just kind of hopping all over the place, you're not building that network of people that you need to build your business. And you're better off to have a smaller group of people that you network with, but you create those powerful relationships.
Absolutely.
Over time. Being an entrepreneur is not a get rich quick scheme.
No, it's not.
It's the long game.
Well, and it's funny because, and I may be going against the grain here, Kim, so you can put your hands up and stop me if you want to. I get really tired of all the gurus out there, and they talk about how much money they made in 6 days. They made $72,000 and blah, 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 blah. Okay, how many times did that person fail before that 6 days they made that money? And
how many years did they fail?
Absolutely.
Or it got
drives
nothing.
Me nuts. Right. It drives me nuts because, I look at, I'll tell you a real number, and I did not realize it until about, I think it was about 9 or maybe a year ago. My husband turned around and I was like, I feel like I'm spending so much money. And I said, I'm going to do a bird's eye view of my business. Mm-hmm. And so I looked up, like it was a bird flying over my business, and I got rid of a lot of things that I was not using. Then I added up, I had spent $93,000 in coaches that got me nowhere. Now, no, that's not true. $93,000, about $63,000, I learned nothing from those people. About $30,000 I did. And I was like, this is insane. And people think that they can just spend, $50 a month and they're going to get everything they need to build a sustainable business that's paying them good money. And you can't do it. And the gurus drive me nuts because they failed years before they really became successful.
Yeah. Yeah, they had to build their way up that positioning ladder. They started out invisible, just like everybody else. They started to become that expert. They became that authority. Some of them have become those massive influencers, but it didn't happen overnight.
Right.
And yeah, like I feel the same way, because when someone says that to me, I'm like, yeah, but you've got 20 years of building up to that point to get that result.
Right. And my son he's an actor, and he really loves acting, and he tried out for Newsies, and now he ended up being Theodore Roosevelt, but they had made a mistake and he wasn't on the callback list, and he was really, really upset. And so I had gone, to YouTube where I go for everything. And I learned the story about Sylvester Stallone and how he was a failure in the beginning and how he tried to sell, what was
Rocky.
it? Rocky, yes. Tried to sell Rocky several times and nobody would buy it. And so that really kind of got him going. Of course, then it was great timing. Then about a week later, the lady was like, y'all never responded to my email. And we're like, we didn't get an email. And she's like, no, he's Teddy Roosevelt, which was a big role in Newsies. And so it was really good for him to realize that. And this was only his second tryout for a play. Mm-hmm. And to get a speaking role like that was crazy. And so to keep him going and keep him motivated to realize that, look at Arnold Schwarzenegger, who, regardless of his political views, he's a great actor, and he didn't make it the first time he did it. He had to really grow and learn and become somebody different. Yeah. And there's tons and tons of examples like that.
And I think that's the key. You've got to learn and grow. Mm-hmm. Your business won't go to the next level until you grow to the next level. And I think something that's important too, and we'll end quickly with this because we're pretty well out of time, but there does come a point in your business when you can no longer do it by yourself.
Absolutely.
If you want your business to grow, you have to bring in people to help you.
Mm-hmm. And that's when, when you're kind of stuck, that's what I really do. I find those hidden barriers in their business so that they can leapfrog to the next profit. Because when you're in the trenches, you sometimes don't see what is blaring out at you as your business. And it's just those little tweaks that can change it completely.
Yeah, exactly. So. Exactly. So Catherine Ann, how can people get a hold of you if they've really enjoyed it today and they want to say, I need more?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's Catherine with the C, Catherine Ann Clayton. You can find me on Facebook. I have my business page and my personal page. And just be sure that when you message me or when you friend me or connect with me, that you can say that, you heard from me on Kim's podcast, Author to Authority, and I will definitely connect with you. I also have videos on YouTube under Catherine Ann Clayton.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Catherine Ann, for being on the show today. And I want to encourage all of you listeners, make sure that you connect with Catherine Ann, but also I would like to invite you to be a part of my Author to Authority Facebook group. It's a fantastic group where, we have a lot of fun. We play a lot with words in that group, but I also do a lot of teaching and training on how to take your business to the next level. How do you become that authority in your niche? And that's one of the ways of building your business faster. So come on to Facebook, Author to Authority group. Thank you, Catherine Ann, for being on the show. This has been so informative. I've really enjoyed it. And you know what? I like you just the way you are.
Thank you. I do too. And thank you so much for having me. I really have enjoyed this. So, and anybody that needs my help, we can do a discovery call and just talk about where you are.
Awesome. So. Well, this has been Catherine Ann Clayton and Kim Thompson-Pinder on the Author to Authority podcast. Thank you for listening, and we will see you on the very next episode. Bye now.